Hey everyone, before we get into today's video, I just want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Shudder. Many of you have probably heard of the streaming platform Shudder, but for those of you who haven't, it is essentially the Netflix for horror. With Shudder, you can choose from a wide variety of thriller, horror, and suspense titles, streaming to all of your favorite devices like your iPhone or your Android, for only $5.99 a month or $56.99 annually. I personally have used Shudder to watch the Creepshow series, which I'm really enjoying so far. It ties in closely with many of the Creepypasta style stories that you hear on this channel, and it's produced by Greg Nicotero, and based on the famous films by George Romero, so you know it's gotta be good. Along with Creepshow, there is a huge collection of movies from old classics like Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to modern favorites like Host and The Beach House. Try Shudder free for 30 days by going to shudder.com and using promo code MrCreeps. That's SHUDDER.com, promo code MrCreeps. A big thanks to Shudder for sponsoring this video. When I was 6 years old, all I wanted for Christmas was a new red Huffy bicycle. I wrote to Santa right after Halloween, making sure to give him extra time to get it for me. I did every chore my parents asked of me, and I brushed my teeth every morning and night. I even gave the $3.52 that I'd earned from clearing Mrs. Barker's driveway the last time that it had snowed. We only got a light dusting, but she was a sweet old lady, and let me use her broom to brush away the thin layer of flakes that hadn't already melted on their own. Needless to say, I was certain I was on the nice list, and thus had secured that magnificent bike. When Christmas Eve finally arrived, my mother made fish for her and my father. But since I didn't like fish, she let me have chicken nuggets instead. After dinner, we snuggled on the couch to watch the colorful lights twinkling on our heavily decorated Christmas tree, which had bowed slightly to the left side because when we put on the ornaments, I kept placing them all in the one place that I could reach. My mother read me The Night Before Christmas, and then we watched some Rankin Bass specials until the lids of my eyes grew heavy and I was ready for sleep. We put out a plate of chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk on a table near the fireplace for Santa, as well as some carrots for his reindeer, and then I headed to bed. I was fast asleep from the moment my head hit the pillow, dreaming of riding around on my new red Huffy bike that I was so sure I would be getting the next morning. My slumber was interrupted when I was roused by a clatter, causing me to wake up, fully alert. I excitedly climbed out of bed, doing my best to be silent as I quickly crept towards the living room, suspecting what I might see. When my head peered around the corner, I nearly yelped in delight. A large man in a red coat and hat was looming over the table where we had left the snacks. I could hear him slobbering as he devoured the cookies and slurped down the milk. Tiptoeing forward, I stood at the edge of the room, and I said in wonderment, "Santa!" The man whirled around, knocking the table over when he did, and causing the empty glass of milk to shatter when it hit the ground. Now that I could see him better, I was a bit shocked by his appearance. His coat was covered in dirt and filth, but I figured that was just due to him constantly going up and down chimneys all night. However, his long, white beard was fairly unkempt, and there were flecks of grime and bits of half-chewed cookies peppered throughout. His teeth looked yellowed and rotten, several of them chipped or missing altogether. He glanced around with wild eyes until they finally found me, and he seemed to relax, the corners of his mouth turning up into a grin. "Oh, it's just you," he said in a gruff voice that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Why aren't you in bed? You don't want me to take back all these presents I brought you, do you?" "I'm sorry," I replied apologetically. "I heard a noise and just wanted to see if it was you." "I guess Santa wasn't as silent tonight as he should have been." He sat down on the edge of the fireplace and said, "Why don't you come tell Santa what you wanted for Christmas, and I'll make sure I got it right." I hesitated for some reason, as if deep down I knew something was off. But this was Santa Claus. It had to be. Who else would have come down the chimney and eaten the cookies, and drank the milk, and left all those presents? So, I shuffled over to him, trying not to let him see me wrinkle my nose when the stink emanating from his clothing filled my nostrils. He patted his knee and said, "Come sit on Santa's lap and tell me." I climbed onto his knee and noticed that it felt a bit damp. He let out a laugh, but it didn't sound like the "ho ho ho" you would normally think Santa would do. It was more like an overeager laugh that became a cough halfway through. And when he did this, I was hit by his reeking breath. I stammered. "I wanted a new red Huffy bike, remember?" "Oh, of course," he replied, grinning wide enough that I could see just how many teeth he was actually missing. "Well, have you been a good boy this year?" "I think so," I answered meekly. "I did all my chores and listened to Mommy and Daddy, and didn't cause any trouble." "Good, good. Then I believe you made the not naughty list this year, my boy. Why don't you go have a peek at your presents? You might just find one that looks suspiciously bike-shaped." He grabbed me as he stood up, and he placed me back down on the ground, and then ducked into the fireplace. He turned back towards me and said, "Remember, I see you when you're sleeping, and I know when you're awake. I know when you've been bad or good, and if you've been bad, like your mommy and daddy, Santa will have to give you coal in your sockets." "You mean stockings?" I asked, but he just grinned and began to climb up the chimney, moving like a spider as he disappeared. I heard him clattering on the roof, and then he was gone. I started checking all the presents that were underneath the tree, moving box after box aside as I hunted for the bike. But I didn't find one large enough that could have contained it. Disappointment set in, but I tried to fight it back, knowing that I should be grateful for what Santa had given me and not be greedy. I sat down on the couch and thought hard about what I could have done to make Santa not give me the bike, and why he would have told me there could be one there when he knew there wasn't. I fell asleep while pondering the conundrum, but I didn't dream of the red Huffy this time. When I woke up again, It was still fairly dark, but I could see the first glimmers of dawn breaching the starlit sky. I got off the couch to go use the bathroom, but something caught my eye. It was hard to see at first, but as I looked closer at where I had been sitting, I realized there was a large rust-colored spot staining the couch cushion. Worried that I would get in trouble, I flipped the cushion over and hoped my mother wouldn't notice. On my way to the bathroom, I checked the clock and saw that it was almost 6 in the morning. I figured my parents had gotten enough sleep, so after I was done emptying my bladder, I made my way to their room to let them know it was Christmas morning and Santa had delivered a bounty of gifts to us. I decided that I wouldn't mention anything about the bike, because really, I didn't want them to think that I was acting like a spoiled brat. I arrived at my parents' bedroom and was a bit puzzled as to why their door was ajar, as they had always kept it closed at night. I pushed it the rest of the way open and rushed towards their bed. "Mommy, Daddy," I called out excitedly. "It's Christmas." When I got no response, I leapt under their bed and jostled them in an attempt to wake them up. "It's Christmas," I repeated, but I still got no answer. I pulled the covers down, hoping that the blast of cool air would do the trick, but nothing happened. I pushed my mother a bit harder this time, and she rolled over onto her back. Mommy?" I choked out, and I could already feel the tears welling up and stinging my eyes. "Mommy, wake up. Please, wake up." I was only 6, but I knew almost right away that she wasn't going to wake up. Her chest was covered in red, and there was a large hole in the middle of it. I rolled my father over to find him bearing a similar wound. The thing that horrified me the most, though, was their eyes. They were staring at me with big, shiny black eyes. They had had coal stuffed into their eye sockets. It was just like Santa had said. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there with my parents for hours. I heard the phone ring several times, but I wasn't allowed to answer the phone, so I just let it keep ringing. When I saw a dim red light reflecting through the window and onto the ceiling, for a brief moment I panicked, thinking it was Rudolph's nose, and that Santa had returned to give me coal as well. But the red was soon joined by blue, and when I looked outside, I saw an ambulance and a couple of police cars pulling up to my house. It turned out that my aunt had been calling since we were supposed to go over there after we had opened presents, and when we didn't show up, and nobody answered the phone, she called the police. They found me sitting amidst my parents, and they quickly carried me away, trying to shield me from the horror of the scene, but the damage had already been done. Everything after that was a blur of people checking to make sure that I was okay, and talking to me about what happened. I told them about Santa, and how he lied to me about the red Huffy bike. They brought me over to the garage and showed me that the bicycle that I had been dreaming about was sitting there with a giant bow wrapped around the handlebars. I had wanted that bike so bad that I knew I should have been happy, but I just felt nothing. My aunt ended up taking me in and raised me alongside my cousins. She was good to me, as close to a mother as she could be. but I still thought of my real mom every night before I fell asleep. I tried so hard to remember her laughing and smiling, hugging me and kissing my forehead before bed. But the only image of her that ever popped into my mind was of her lying there, staring at me with those big, coal eyes. They never caught the man that did that to my parents, and I wonder about his last words to me. I worry that one day I'll see Santa again, and that will be the last thing I see with my own eyes.